Well, we've seen Duncan on the Velocity video, and now he's here in real life, which is great. Duncan is a graduate of the University of Waterloo in math, and I won't promote the year because I don't like promoting the year I graduate unless you.
It was 91.
91.
I'll admit it.
And he's done his own startups, and now he's advising startups as the entrepreneur in residence at Ventures West. So very pleased to have him here, Duncan.
Thanks very much, Sean. Thank you. Well, I've had the pleasure of meeting. Oh, I got to turn this on. That's right. Not that I'm likely to need it. It's not that big a room. But I had the pleasure of meeting some of you last night at the dinner, and hopefully I'll get to meet a lot more of you over the next few months that you're in the Velocity program. I'm going to be one of the mentors and advisors to the program over the next term, and hopefully for terms to come. Sean will probably make his decision on that after this talk. So my title up here is very uncreatively Things I've Learned About Doing Startups, and really if you dig into this, the truth of it is things I learned from my mistakes doing my own startup is probably about 80% of it. Most of the things that you'll see on here are things that I didn't do right the first time around with the company that I founded in 2000 called Think Dynamics. But fortunately, that company ended up having some success and got bought by IBM, and I went to IBM for 2 years and had the great experience then of sitting on the other side of the acquiring table, where I was in acquisition groups doing due diligence on companies that IBM was looking to acquire and didn't, understanding what some of the things were, why they didn't acquire, and also ones that they did acquire. So I got to see it from that side of the table. And then after leaving IBM, came back to Toronto and got involved with a venture capital company. So got to spend a lot of time with a lot of startups, successful ones, failing ones going sideways. Got to do due diligence on a lot of new ideas, taking a look at them for investment. So I got to take a look at, I've had a good look at startups and the things that make them successful, the things that don't work, reasons why venture capital companies would be interested or not, reasons why acquirers would be interested or not. So a lot of the things that I made mistakes on and thought maybe there was a better way to do, I got to see it in action later. And also got to get confirmed for me that, yeah, they were mistakes and there are better ways to do it. So hopefully I can bring that kind of well-rounded, balanced view here to some of the things that I'm going to talk about. Now, the other thing I just want to point out is everything you're going to see here is my experience and my opinion, okay? Or things that I've, gleaned from other people that are smart people. My first two charts are inspired by Mark Andreessen. He has a great blog that I recommend you have a look at called pmarka.com, and he has his rules for startups. And obviously, Mark Andreessen's been a very successful guy in the startup world. And I was reading his blog a while back, and I thought he did these first two. The first two charts here are really inspired by what he wrote with some of my stuff added in. But they are opinions, so feel free to agree, feel free to disagree. We can talk about it, ask questions after, challenge me, but all I can offer you is my experience. And I just went way past already. This thing's quite sensitive. Sorry about that. Right, so first thing you should probably ask yourself, which presumably you have asked yourself already, being that you've joined the Velocity program, but is a startup right for me? And this is about potentially working for a startup or starting a startup. So beyond the first two slides where I talk about the good and the bad of being involved with startups, most of the rest of it is really guidance about you being a founder of a startup as opposed to just working for one. But you'll get something from all of it. So the great things about a startup, the great reasons to be involved in one. You get to control your own destiny. You're going to find if you do work for other companies, there are going to be times where you look at what your management is doing and you go, you know what, that's not how I do it. I don't think that's the way it should be done. And in a startup, it really all comes down to you. The way things get done or the way that you want to drive it if you were the person in charge. And that's a really great thing. And of course, you also get to create something new and potentially world-changing. And just imagine being a Bill Gates or a Mark Andreessen, somebody that created technologies that have completely changed the way that we communicate, the way we live in many, many cases. The PC and the PC operating system and what that did for the world in bringing computing to the masses, and then the move towards connecting them all together so that we can communicate, the democratization of communication to a large degree and to media that came through the internet. And that wouldn't have happened without the browser. In a startup, you get to wear many hats, and this is a great thing about it. In the early days of a startup, you get to try just about every job under the sun, particularly if you're a founding group. Sometimes you learn that you are good at things you didn't realize, or that there's something you like doing that you didn't even know you would. I went into founding Think Dynamics as an expert in systems administration, systems management, systems architecture. I came out of the back end 2.5 years later as a director of strategy at IBM. So I didn't see myself in that sort of a role, but now, from that point forward, I've been very much more involved in strategy as opposed to hands-on work in the data center, although that's still a field that I play in quite a lot. Now, another thing is you have a real chance to challenge yourself, and you get to learn a lot about yourself, what you're good at, what you're not good at, how you deal with difficult situations, because there'll be many in a startup, and what your limits are, and often you'll be amazed at how far your limits are out from where you might have thought they were. And again, just like I was saying with your own destiny, often, you work for somebody else and you don't like the culture, you don't like the way the company runs, or it's not as much fun as you think it could be. You maybe don't like the people you work with. When you build a company, you define the culture, you hire the people. You have a chance to do it the way you want it to. Now, culture is a very hard thing to do and to do right. Hiring is also very hard, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And of course, if you do it all right, and you're one of the ones that has a lot of luck mixed in with doing a lot of the right things in the right market, then you can make a lot of money. And obviously, a lot of people have. And one of the great things about the internet and about the movement towards application consumption over the internet is where it used to be, 10, 15 years ago, or even 5 years ago, a success for the entrepreneur really meant you built a company and probably sold it for $100 or more million for you to really have a big success. Now you can have companies that are web-based companies where it never grew above 4 or 5 people that sell for $5 to $10 million, and all of them do quite nicely out of the deal. So there's a lot more opportunity now to do that. However, because it's easier, there's also a lot more competition. So when you do have an idea, there's probably another 100 people going after the same idea at the same time. So you just have to execute better. So, the not so good. And I'm not doing this to scare you. My hope is that at the end of this, you'll go, those aren't bad reasons. Those are exactly the reasons why I want to do it. That excites me. That's a challenge. That's what I want to do. And if that's how you come out of the end of this page, then you are the right person for a startup without a doubt. So, no inertia. When you're in a big company, you could be not doing things for a little while and stuff still happens. There's inertia. They've already got customer relationships. You've got other employees there that are doing things even when you're not. When you're in a startup, there's no inertia. If you're not doing it, it's not happening, right? It stops dead, okay? So that's something that you realize very quickly. If you don't do it, it's not happening. And there's nobody telling you what to do or when to do it. That sounds like a great thing, but it's really hard to look at a blank canvas and think, what do I do next? And even if you then can come up with some of the things that you should do next, which do I do first? What's most important right now? That's actually very hard. And I remember coming out of university and sort of realizing somewhere about a year into my career that, back in university, I just had to make some choices about which courses I was going to take, and then from that, for the rest of the term, it was kind of laid out for me. I knew what I had to do. I knew what my classes were. I knew my exams were. It was very clear to me what to do. And you come out, and particularly doing a startup, and you think, wow, I could go in so many directions, and there's so much that needs to be done. What do I do first? It's actually a little bit, it can be a bit daunting if you're not somebody that takes to that well. Startups are an emotional roller coaster. So, I can think back to doing Think Dynamics, things like financing and raising financing. I mean, this is really, raising financing can be the difference between you and all of the people you've hired having a job in a week or not. Customers and closing customer deals, same thing. Payroll is sometimes dependent on a customer deal coming in. an acquisition, the roller coaster we went through with IBM, I mean, from the day that we first started talking to IBM about a business partnership to the day they acquired was about 1 year and 2 months. And in that period of time, we went up and down, up and down. You know, one day you think you're going to rule the world, and the next day you think you're ruined. And it is an emotional roller coaster being in a startup, but that can be really exciting as well. So it's just something to be ready for. Now, hearing no a lot, unless you spent some time as a salesperson, this might not be something you're used to. You might not like it. As a startup, you hear no a lot. You hear it from investors, you hear it from potential customers, you hear it from potential employees, because you are risky. And people, the average people, don't like risk. You're finding your way through to the people that do like risk the way that you like risk, and, but you're going to hear no a lot along the way. But that's okay. You know, the yeses are out there. You may not be who you think you were. You might go into this thinking you are something. You might discover it through your own voyage of discovery. As I was saying, you learn a lot about yourself. It might be thrust upon you by your investors. You raise money, and the investors say, you know what, I know you thought you were going to be the CEO. Sorry, you're not. You know, a lot of young entrepreneurs that start out, you get a group of guys and girls that are in their early 20s, and they start out and they give themselves titles like CEO and VP of this and VP of that, and the reality is you're not. And investors are sometimes the ones to tell you that. Sometimes you are. There are guys out there like Mark Zuckerberg who end up rising to that. Now, his venture capitalists and board have surrounded him with a lot of great expertise to allow him to be successful. But in many cases, what ends up happening is you get told, you know what, you're a really valuable member of the team. That's not the problem, but you're not the CEO. So those can sometimes be a little bit hard for your ego. Startups are fragile. Things that are just bumps in the road for big companies, you know, a mortgage crisis, a natural disaster like a hurricane, a terrorist event, things like that can cause some pain to a big company can spell death for a small company. When you're a startup, particularly when you're not break even and you're dependent on financing, you know, if you were coming up right now in this current climate to needing financing and you haven't done something really amazing with your last round of financing, chances are you're going to have trouble getting more money unless you're doing something, as I say, pretty significant. The money dries up in hard times, and when that happens, it could mean going out of business for you, and that's just purely out of your control. So a lot of things that you can't control can spell death for a startup. Work-life balance, I say, what's that? You know, you can definitely go in and you can definitely go into it with a mindset that I'm going to have a work-life balance in my business. I'm going to have it for my employees. I'm going to have it for me. And this is a conversation I have with my wife a lot. But if you take a look at the next 3 things there after the work-life balance, what's that? Hiring, well, is really hard. Making payroll is really hard, because that can mean, you know, doing the third thing, getting people to pay for your product and raising financing. And the reality is, when you're coming up to having to pay your people or to having your company run out of money, the work-life balance goes out of the window. And the reality, again, is when you're a startup that is at a point where you're not cash flow positive yet, you're almost always in that state. You're almost always trying to deal with those 3 things there. And so your best intentions about living a balanced life can go out the window. You guys are at a great age for that. You know, that's in your 20s and your early 30s is a great time to do that kind of thing, and it's a hell of an experience. But you know, be aware it's a little bit hard. It's definitely hard. And the higher up you are in the organization of the startup, the harder it is. Now, lastly, you know, you lose money if you're not successful. You know, that might be money that you've invested in it yourself. In many cases, it's just money you would have earned if you had gone and taken a job elsewhere that would have been paying you more than you're going to be getting in a startup, where you're going to get kind of a living wage and equity in the startup. Or if you're a founder, you might not be earning anything while you're doing it. And in some cases, it's your friends and family money. You know, a lot of startups get launched off friends and family money, and it's actually a really heart-wrenching thing to see an entrepreneur going under when they've taken $500,000 from friends and family, and they're going to have to turn and tell those friends and family, I've lost your money. So that's a pretty hard thing. But that, you know, is a potential reality of a startup. So I say that wasn't to scare you. That's just a little bit of reality about doing a startup and going into that world. For some of you, it might make you think, well, that's not for me. And others, it might make you think, you know what, maybe I want to go work for one before I start my own and have all of that on my shoulders. But for others of you, you're going to go, you know what, that's exactly why I'm going into it. I love that challenge. That's the guy that I am. That's the girl that I am. That's what I want to be. So that's great. Now, if you get past that and you decide, I'm going to do this, I'm going to start a company, what are some of the things that I've learned and seen that are potentially good things to think about? By no means an exhaustive list. This was me sitting down and thinking about a few things, but others would have a different list and maybe different priorities. But I think you got to start with being in it for the right reasons. Do it, again, because those other things excite you. Be doing it around an idea and a market that excites you. Do it about something that you're passionate about, because when it is hard, it's really hard if you don't even like what you're doing all that much. It's a whole lot easier when you're pretty passionate about the thing that you're trying to bring to market. And don't do it just for prestige. As I say, you may not be the person you think you are. If you're doing it because you just want to have CEO on your title, and if that gets taken away from you, there's nothing left in it for you, don't even go into it. You do it because you want to see this idea of yours become something that people use every day. This one I just added this morning, assess the market and all competition. This is something that I think is really important, so you don't waste a lot of time. It's often amazing when I talk to entrepreneurs and they say, I got this great idea, it's going to change the world. It's a micro-blogging site. You can only write up to 140 characters, and people can subscribe to you, and they can see everything that you're thinking, and they can keep track of what you're doing. And you say to them, "Have you heard of Twitter?" And they go, "No, what's Twitter?" Look it up. It's actually, that's a really extreme example. So not too many people now probably don't know Twitter, but this 8 months ago, I got those kind of conversations. Be exhaustive before you invest a lot of your time and energy into it, and before you go out and start looking for help. Be exhaustive. And when I say understand all of your competition, when you take a look at an opportunity, you're solving a problem for a group of people. Understand that your competition isn't just other micro-blogging sites, like Pounce. Your competition is anything that can fulfill that need for that group of consumers, and even doing nothing is one of them, okay? Them doing nothing, just deciding it's not that important to them. Maybe less appropriate for something like a microblogging site, but certainly for things like enterprise software where you think you're going to go in and solve a problem for companies, doing nothing is an option. If it costs more to fix, or if it's more difficult to fix than just to leave it, it doesn't make sense. We still see places where you would, you look at it and you go, why don't they automate that? Like toll booth collectors or something like that. Well, you know what? Actually, it's cheap enough to do it that way. We don't want to change it. But there's great technology that could do that. Doesn't matter, So you have to look at all forms of competition, not just the things that look and smell like what you're doing. Anything that would solve that business problem. Have a vision for your business. When I say this, it's fairly encompassing. What do you want it to look like? Are you trying to build a lifestyle business? Are you going to be happy if everyone in the company is getting paid pretty well, and or are you trying to go for the moon? Are you trying to build something that is a Netscape or a Ning or something like that? It's a very different mindset. It's a very different business that you're trying to build, different people that you need to know, that you need to meet, different things that you have to do as far as raising financing and how you're going to pay the bills. So have that vision for your business. Think about 1 year out, 2 years out. Be bold. Think 3 to 5 years out. What do I want it to look like? Picture that. Because I'll tell you one thing, when you go to try and find good people to follow you as a leader, if you can't give them that picture, they're not going to come and work for you for a nominal wage and some equity in your company. You've got to be able to paint that picture for them and really, really see it and believe it in your own mind that that's where you're going. The reality is your 2, 3, 4 year vision is probably not what you're going to be in that point in time. Very few companies are successful for what they start out doing. You zig and zag along the way a lot. but you've always got to have that vision, and it does change over time. But as you learn from the market what isn't going to work, but you've got to have it. Find mentors and advisors. You know, any business that you go into, particularly where there's a domain expertise, where you don't come from the market, where the problem is that you're trying to solve, where you're not someone who's worked there for 15 years, go and find those people. You know, don't assume that you've got a better way of doing things that they're just going to embrace because you've come up with it and it just makes so much more sense to you that it should be done that way. You've got to go and talk to people that really understand those industries and get help from them. And then take a look across all of the aspects of getting to your vision, that plan that you've laid out for yourself. And what are the things that I don't know? Figure out what you don't know and then figure out how you're going to close that gap. Where can I learn about it? Who can I learn about it from? And as we'll talk about a little bit more, mentors and advisors can be really, really valuable to you later when it comes time to try and raise financing or hire management staff and things like that, get your early customers. So they can be a really valuable asset to you. Co-founders. You know, if you're on your own, I more or less did my first one on my own. I did it through an incubator, so you had a bit of help, but as the founder, I was a sole founder. I've personally decided I wouldn't do that again. It's nice to have somebody else so that when you're kind of ebbing, you know, they're flowing and you can keep each other moving. It's nice to be able to distribute the work a little bit and have someone that you enjoy working with. I would say 1 or 2 co-founders, so, you know, sort of up to 3 is good. I've seen some situations where people have 6, and that can be a little bit hard. With co-founders, though, of course, you're dealing with people. This is a human interaction, so there are also challenges. You're coming into this as equals in many cases with co-founders. The big challenges can come when you decide to part or when someone pushes you apart. It could be that one person wants to leave. They just decided this isn't for me, this isn't the life I really wanted. I want to do something else. How do you extract them from the business? You guys have got equal ownership potentially or some level of ownership together. You want to have that worked out ahead of time. What's even worse is where you decide he's not right for my business or she's not right for my business anymore and you want to get them out. You need a way to do that. And then often it comes up with investors, where the investors say, I'll put money in, but you know, your partner is holding you back. That's not the person. They can't stay in the company. So that kind of thing can happen. You want to talk about these things beforehand with co-founders. You want to have that worked out and have an understanding ahead of time that if this happens, this is how we're going to deal with it. Talk to a lawyer. They have structures for that. Talk to a venture capital firm. They know how to do that sort of thing ahead of time. Mentors and advisors can be really helpful in some of those sort of structures as well, so that you can avoid really ugly situations. I've seen startups that should have been successful, could have been successful, fail and go out of business because the founders were in a big fight at a time when one of them had to leave or wanted to leave, and the business suffered because of it to the point of going under. If they would have just had that worked out ahead of time, there would have been a set of rules at that point in time that you walked through, you couldn't deviate from. There was no fight, there was no argument. It was like a prenuptial agreement. Take Eeyores and Tiggers with a grain of salt. You're going to run into a lot of people out there as you talk about your idea, whether they're potential advisors, potential mentors, potential employees, investors, and there's always those out there that I call Eeyores and Tiggers. The Eeyores are, you know Winnie the Pooh. Everyone remember Winnie the Pooh? Eeyore's the donkey. Everything's bad for Eeyore, right? Oh, it's not going to work. It's just they're just down people. And then the Tiggers are the ones that they'll fall in love with whatever you throw in front of them, and they'll tell you how great you are, and it's just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Both of those people have probably got great nuggets of wisdom to share with you if they're people that you went to because they've got experience. So take those bits of wisdom from them. Don't take the emotion with it necessarily, the good or the bad in those sort of cases. It's really easy. It's very easy to get down as an entrepreneur that's trying to do something if you run into a lot of Eeyores. It's really easy to start doubting yourself and to think, no, this isn't going to work. You got to step back, separate their emotion from the reality of what you've learned from them and be analytical about it. And then the same thing with the Tiggers. You can get blazing ahead on an idea, thinking that it's going to be the best thing in the world, and you've just unfortunately talked to a bunch of the wrong people that have headed you down a path that's going to be a dead end. Take what they're saying into account, but don't take the emotion with it necessarily. So market, team, product. In that order, this has been a long debate among venture capital. I don't know if Umer's still in the room. I don't see him around, but Umer from Extreme, who just spoke previously. You know, some venture capitalists will tell you it's team, team, team. Others will say it's market, market, market. There was, I'm trying to remember his name now. I wrote it down here somewhere, but Andy Rashleff, he was formerly with Benchmark Capital. You know, he said, when a great team meets a bad market, the market wins. When a bad team meets a good market, market wins. When a great team meets a great market, magic happens. The reality is, it can be the best team going, but if you're trying to build product into a bad market, you're not going to get anywhere. Like today, if you were to come to me and you say, I got this fantastic idea that will completely revolutionize the way that digital rights management is done for CDs so that people can't rip CDs anymore, I would say you could spend a whole lot of years of your life, money, and time on something for which there is going to be no market. You could have the best team in the world on that, and it's not going to matter. I'm guessing that I was talking with Bud at lunch, and I was noticing that one of you in here had a Segway bag. I was kind of intrigued to see that Segway was making bags. You know, there is a fantastic example of a company that was a fantastic team of really smart people with a lot of money behind them that spent a lot of years building something that nobody wanted. You know, the Segway scooter was interesting. It hit what I would call a false positive. It got a bunch of early adopters really excited about it that were happy to go around with a helmet on, riding this Segway. The reality is that jumped the shark before it jumped across the chasm. You know, nobody wanted it in the mainstream. It was too expensive, and let's face it, you look like a dork, right? There was a good example of where if they had understood their market a whole lot better before they spent a whole lot of money and time on product, that would have been a really good thing. So when good investors are looking at you, if you come to them and say, I've got this great product idea, and I've got this great team of people to build it and to take it to market, don't be surprised if they're totally focused on who's going to buy it, why are they going to buy it, how big is that market, you know, and then do you have the right product? You know, what pain are you solving for them? Big question. And then they'll be looking at, now, do you have the right product to fulfill, to solve that pain, and is this the right team to keep it going? Because the reality is, in a really good market, with a really big opportunity, bad teams can be wildly successful, even with marginal products. And Twitter could even be a potential example of that. Not to say that it's been in any way successful, and I'll talk about them a little bit later, but you know, by no means a great product. Twitter has got a lot of problems with it, but a lot of people are using it because there's a demand for that functionality right now, and they just happen to be the most ubiquitous thing out there. Another thing I would recommend is find analogous success stories in adjacent markets. So if you're thinking about a business and you have your 1, 2, 3 year plan as to what it's going to look like, look in adjacent markets, look in history. There's a lot to be learned there. I'm not saying you're going to find an analogy to your technology or the problem you are solving. However, you're very likely to find analogies to the business model, the way you plan to make money for that technology, and to the consumer behavior around that type of a business model or around the type of problem that you're solving. And you're going to hear this a lot from venture capital. You know, who would you compare yourself to? Tell me some success stories in the past that you would compare yourself to. You know, and that's an important thing to understand that. You know, we can see right now, I didn't prepare this and I probably have to think about it a little bit, but I'm guessing, you know, you look at TV that's been an ad-driven content forever. You know, people didn't pay for television. It was always ad-driven. And then we tried to do a model with things over the internet where we wanted to get people to pay for content. And it didn't work. And now we're rapidly moving towards ad-driven in content over the internet the same way we always did on radio and TV. You know, that is it's a model that worked for a lot of the right reasons, and good chance that it's going to work again on the internet the same way it did on other mediums. So understand that. That's a good thing to have in your back pocket. And learn from it. You need a plan for paying the bills. You know, as I said, what's your vision? Are you going to be a lifestyle company? In that case, chances are you don't want to take venture capital. You probably don't even want to take angel money. Maybe you want to get some government grants if you can get them. Well, that they're out there and it's worth looking at, but sometimes they can take more time than building the company. But definitely worth looking at, depending on what you're into. Or is it customers that are going to pay for it? If in many cases, that's a great way to start. I say there, early adopters kill two birds with one stone. In the early days, you're trying to figure out whether you have got the right approach to the right market. And the best way to find that out is by working with real customers and trying to put things in front of them and get their validation. So if they can be paying you for that while you build your product for them, that's a great way to do it. Typically, it doesn't give you the ability to scale super, super fast. It takes a bit of time that way. You're usually living lean. You're not building out ahead of customer demand. You're building for customer demand. Works really well for lifestyle business, what I call lifestyle business, meaning one where you're just truly trying to build a sustainable business that's going to pay the bills. You're going to do well as an owner. You're going to hire a lot of people over time, relatively slowly, and you're going to grow into a market. If you're in a nascent market that is going to grow really, really fast, like many sort of web trend type of things are, that's maybe not the way you can build that. You got to build out ahead of demand in many cases, and then you need venture capital, and that's really what it's there for. It's a difficult thing to do, but that's what it's there for. So early adopters, if a lot of the companies that I've run into that have been wildly successful, they started with customers before they even wrote a line of code. I'm involved with some right now. They've got big marquee customers that are actually agreeing that if you can build the thing that you're telling me you can build, I will pay for that. And we will help you. We will tell you what our needs are. We'll sit you down with our people. We'll explain to you exactly what's right and wrong about your specification, because what you're talking about building, we need. If you can have a few of those, you're really in good shape. So I highly recommend that. And that's, again, where mentors and advisors can be really helpful in potentially connecting you in with those kinds of people so that you can maybe be building for someone as opposed to building for a year, year and a half, a product to launch it out to the market to find that nobody cared. That's a horrible place to be. So that's getting started. So once you get started, we talked a lot about market. So what are some, here's some things that I've learned about market and addressing the market. You're small. Don't try to boil the ocean. This is one I definitely learned from experience. Think Dynamics, the original vision was a boil the ocean vision. We were going to be a service provider and build software. And then the software had a huge grand vision that really was probably bigger than any startup should tackle. And fortunately, our investors, when we went to raise a Series A round of capital, right away said, you're not doing a services business. That doesn't make any sense. You're going to just build the software. So they got rid of that right away for us, which was good. They brought a little sense to us, and it was absolutely the right thing to do. As we moved along, we learned what the market was really willing to accept, and that allowed us to trim down what we were building. We kept a lot of that big boil the ocean vision and what we talked to the market about, but a lot of it became futures. To help people get a vision of where we could take them, but it wasn't what we were building. We were building a much smaller piece, which is what the market needed today, and that's pretty important. Until you get that validation, what Mark Andreessen calls product market fit, or market product fit, your business is a hypothesis. You are not a business until you understand and have proven that people want what you are building and that you are solving a problem for them and they will pay for it. Remember that, okay? It's a great idea is just a great idea. You would not believe the number of companies that I see, even coming from teams that you would think knew better, that is just technology for technology's sake. They're doing it because it can be done, not because anybody wants it. And great companies fail. What look like should be great companies fail all the time because they don't zig and zag and take that core great technology and have the guts to change the direction of their business towards what the market is actually going to want, that's built on top of what they were doing before, and in sometimes is a complete other direction. My wife, who's actually in the room, Heather, she was involved with a company in Toronto in, I guess it was the late 90s, early 2000s, called Delano. Delano had built this fantastic development platform for creating messaging solutions. And what they found is that nobody wanted a platform. At the time, though, CRM solutions were really, really hot. So what they did is they built a CRM solution, customer relation management system, thank you. Customer relation management system on top of their platform, and that made their business. That was the thing that customers wanted. They didn't want a platform where they had to build a CRM system on it. They wanted a CRM system. So they got a lot of success out of that. It was a very big change for the company. Based on getting the success in CRM, customers then had the ability to see, wow, we got the CRM system that's extensible because of the platform under it. Then they started using the platform. Then the platform had an opportunity to grow. Unfortunately, for a whole bunch of other reasons, the company went bust after going public. But that was a lot of the dot-com fervor and management that who potentially made some bad choices of expanding into a market. And again, even at that point, they were a small company. 9/11 came along, and their business dried up. People's minds were elsewhere. And even at that point, they were a 700-person company, gone. And that was just a big market change. Things that were out of their control, things that were in their control. So you must achieve product market fit. That is your number one focus as a startup. From the day you guys decide we're moving forward, that is your focus until you know you've got it. So how do you know? How do you know if you've got it? Well, first of all, how do you I have this a little later on. How do you know if you have it right? You know you don't have product market fit if customers don't seem to be getting the value out of your product that you thought they would. They're trying it. They're going, not sure. If it's not selling that easily, if sales cycles are long, you don't have product market fit. If you're finding that the press buzz that you get is kind of blah, it's kind of, it's interesting. Those are good signs that you don't have product market fit. When you have it, the market pulls the product from you. That's the other thing. When you don't have it, you feel like you're pushing your product into the market. You don't get a whole lot of feedback on what features to add to your product. That's not coming in. You're kind of making stuff up and you feel like you're pushing it out to see if anyone wants it. When you have product market fit, the market pulls product from you. Okay? It wants it. It's coming to you and asking for it. The ideas as to where your product should go from here are coming to you. You almost can't, that's why even a bad team can be successful in a good market, because the market will tell you what it needs. It will pull you along. Revenue's coming in, you're getting resumes in your inbox as the CEO of the company. That's when you've got product market fit. There's a buzz around you. Press is calling you and wanting to know about what you're doing. So until you have that, it is your number one focus to get product market fit. How do you do that? Get customer validation early and often, and not just one. And I say there, expect to change direction and iterate. As I say, that Delano, they went down, they realized they weren't getting it with the platform, they changed direction, they became a CRM company, and then they found it. That they got enough buzz out of that to go public, which is a pretty big, difficult thing to do as an early company. So you've got to get working with customers early. Don't sit down in a room with a bunch of you and raise money and start building product and decide to raise your head in 2 years from now and see if anyone likes what you built. That is a sure way to failure. You're counting a lot more on luck there than you are on reality. So get customer validation early. Test things out. If you're an enterprise product, that's go and get those early adopters working with you very, very early on. If you're a web-based product, closed betas, those sorts of things can be really, really valuable in helping you figure things out. I don't know if this is just an anecdote that maybe I have it later on in the presentation, maybe it was meant for here, but as that is your big focus, don't let other things distract you from getting to that. When I was talking about earlier how it's hard to look at a blank canvas and then prioritize what you got to do, getting to a point of product market fit is so important. You got to stay focused. Networking with people is less important. Being on Facebook and creating a big Facebook group around your product and your company is not that important. Talking to press and analysts and things like that. Analysts can be helpful if you're getting information from them, but talking to press and trying to create hype before you have this can not only be distracting to your business, it can be detrimental. I don't know if any of you saw Cool, the search engine that tried to come out and compete with Google, they clearly spent more time trying to raise hype than they did on building product and understanding whether they had the right mix for what the market wanted. And as a result, I won't be surprised to see Cool go out of business. They just lost a couple of senior executives in the last week. They hyped this big product launch. They came out saying we're going to be better than Google, and they just plain weren't. That was a great example of where a much longer closed beta and a whole lot more time figuring out what the market wanted was the right thing to do, not spending their time on hype and trying to drive product into the market that the market didn't want. And then have a business model. You know, there are companies out there, and this is one that where different people will differ on this. You will find VCs. You know, one is Fred Wilson at Union Square Ventures. He blogs under avc.com. It's a good blog to read. He's an investor in Twitter. You know, he'll say that a business, you know, getting eyeballs that you can hopefully monetize later is a business model. I wouldn't do one myself that way, especially not in this current market where we're coming into a market of such uncertainty. To build a business where you're just trying to get lots of eyeballs, where you don't even have a sense of how you might make money off of those later, you know, I would say at least have, it may not be the way you make the money, at least have an idea of how you can monetize your business and the problem that you're solving up front. You know, have a business model you're working to. It's going to change, it's going to iterate along with your product and your approach to the market, but have one. So product. You'll notice I don't say a whole lot here, although it's a piece that we all think is a really big part of it. And it is a big part of it. You know, building good product is so important. And I think on one of my next charts, I re-emphasize it in a different way, and I'll bring it up there. But this has got to be a solid foundation. You can change product. You can restart if you've got the right vision. But spaghetti's hard to untangle. If you write a lot of bad code and then you do have to do a restart, it can kill you. The time it takes you to make a change in direction with your technology so that you can move your business in the right direction can be too long if you didn't write your code, didn't write your application in a way that lended itself well to modification in that way. You know, there were a lot of companies in the space I was in, the data center automation space, that started as services companies just like we thought we would. They started a little before us. They actually did start as services companies. Unlike us, they didn't have investors that told them don't do services, just do software. They went into the services business, then later realized that wasn't going to work. You know, we were all early cloud computing platforms at the end of the day, and they turned themselves into software businesses. And I can remember talking to one of the big ones was Loud Cloud. Mark Andreessen started Loud Cloud. It became Opsware. Last year sold to HP for $1.6 billion. It was a pretty good success story at the end of the day. But I remember talking to Insik Ree, who was one of the founders of Loud Cloud, and then went on to be, you know, the chief strategy officer at Opsware. And they were a head-to-head competitor with Think Dynamics, the company that I started. And he said, you know what? You're so lucky you're still a private company. They went public as Loud Cloud. So they were a public company now. So you're so lucky you're still a private company, because when we built our platform, we built it to be something we would use to deliver services to people. Now we've turned it into a piece of software that we have to deliver shrink-wrapped to a customer who's going to deploy it in their data center and manage it. That's very different software when you're delivering software that way. They'd written a bunch of stuff in Perl and Python that now needed to be turned into a commercial language like Java. They had to do a complete rewrite of their whole application for the most part as a public company where they had street expectations on meeting next quarter's numbers. It was a really hard thing. We had built ours right off the start as a Java platform. It was very easy for us to change and become commercial software. Now, fortunately today, there's been such a move towards software as a service that you probably don't have to worry about that. The chances of you creating software that's going to be written to be deployed in a customer data center today is getting, you know, smaller and smaller. You're more likely to be writing something to be delivered as a service. But in that case, it's still important because you are the company who's going to have to maintain that in the future. And as you start getting customers, quality of service is going to be so important. If you can't figure out what's going wrong with your software, and you've got customers depending on their livelihoods with your software, if they're running their business on what you've written and have put up on the web, and you can't debug your code, you can't figure out very quickly how to, you know, why it's causing problems, you can't iterate fast or change direction, you're putting their businesses in jeopardy along with your own, and that won't be tolerated for long at all. So an important thing in getting there is start with good development QA practices. Again, this is one of those places where even if you're not at a point where you really are ready for a VP of R&D, somebody who's really done this before and built very scalable commercial grade software, that might be a good advisor to find somewhere along the way, someone who could be a mentor for you that can give you some ideas on how to go about doing that. I set up the top there, focus on the important things, not the fun things. This is, again, product market fit thing. It's really easy as developers. We get the stuff that we just really love. We want to go and do it. We want to build it. You got to focus on the things that are going to move the dial for your company, not the things that are fun for you to do. That's really, really important. So staying connected to the business as a developer even is extremely important as a startup. Every minute of your time is valuable. It's costing the company money, and that's a limited resource. You have limited time to succeed. Be careful with licenses. In this open source world, one of the things that we learned, fortunately not too much the hard way, we only had one instance of this as Think Dynamics, is when IBM bought us, they have software tools at IBM that scour your code to find out if there is anything open source in there under a license that could cause problems for them. Because the reality is, if you're under a GPL license or something like that, and you modify that and build your application around it, it can render your code GPL as well. That's not something IBM wants. They want to sell their product, not give it away in many cases. So understanding the use of open source code within your own is important to keep yourself clean and not get into a situation where you all of a sudden owe somebody a whole lot of money or get lawsuits for something that you've done in the way you've used that product. So again, read about that, get advice on that. There's so many open source licenses out there, it's a little hard to stay on top of. Fortunately, a lot of them are GPL, LGPL. There's a new one called AGPL, but important one to be worried to look at because it does require you give attribution even if you're using their software in a web-based service. So that was really kind of that kind of came about because companies like Google make a whack load of money creating services built entirely on top of open source platforms that they don't even give attribution to, and the open source programs never even get any code back from Google. So the AGPL license sort of says you at least have to tell the market that you're using this product under the covers. And if you don't, then you can get sued. So, and then think about scale. If you're a web-based platform, you have to think early on. This is one of those things I was saying. If you build your product and you haven't thought about scale, I'm not saying that you need to build your database with sharding and things like that on the very first day you start building your product. But think about it. Don't paint yourself into a corner. Don't do things that prevent you from scaling. Think about the architecture of your product early on so that you can scale. Learn what that means to scale. And then look at things that you can use out in the market like EC2, cloud computing platforms, as opposed to thinking that you're going to go out and buy a whole lot of hardware, and necessarily that may not be the most cost-effective way for you to do that as a small company. There's a lot of incredible services out there now that you can get for pennies an hour that give you access to hundreds and hundreds of compute servers, on an hourly basis at 10 cents an hour. That kind of thing is available. So be aware of that kind of thing as you start moving forward. So leadership, this is a really interesting one, and I would say this is probably an area where I made a huge number of mistakes in my early days. If you start a company, you are a leader whether you believe it or not. So start believing it and start understanding it and figure out what leading well means. The people that work for you are looking to you to give them direction. You have to set a clear vision for them with clear milestones. That vision that you started your company with, that's something they need to understand. They need to understand what are the milestones on the road to getting to that vision. They can't read your mind. You have to communicate, and you have to communicate well. So that's an important aspect of being a good leader. You need to be confident. They need to see that you are confident about that. But don't be arrogant. That doesn't do you any good. Be friendly with the people that you're working with, but remember you're not their friends. That's an important thing as a leader. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But one of the things I would say is, as a first-time leader, I think one of the reasons that you can run into problems is that you need to give this air of confidence in your vision and what you're setting forth, but inside there's going to be some part of you, and most of us, that wonders, do I really have it? Am I really as confident as I'm trying to portray? And that's where you can get into problems of, showing arrogance, being an angry guy around the place or something like that as a coping mechanism, as a defense mechanism to try and hide the uncertainty that you might feel. And you see this all the time with entrepreneurs and first-time CEOs. Just be aware of it. It's okay to be unsure. That's why you get mentors and people like that, where you don't have to necessarily show it in front of the people that work for you that need to see your rock hard, solid confidence. But you can have mentors out there that have been through it before that you can talk about the things that you're not necessarily all that sure about. You got to lead by example. You can't expect your people to put in the extra effort and go the extra mile to be in there until 11 o'clock coding to meet a customer deadline if you're going home at 5 and putting your feet up. Chances are you're not going to be able to do that, but lead by example. Be the person that you want your company to be. Culture is really important. I already talked about that. I say it's like a relationship. It takes a lot of work. It's not something you can just say, this is our culture, go forth and be this culture, and it's just going to happen. It takes a lot of work, and it starts from the top down. You have to exude the culture that you want to build in your company. And you find very, very quickly, you can look across really, really big organizations like an Oracle with a big, big, bold leader like Larry Ellison at the front. The culture of that company comes from Larry, for better or worse. The culture at Sun really does come from Scott McNealy, better or worse. And from Apple, Steve Jobs. The culture of that company comes from him, and you can see it in their individual personalities, how that permeates the whole organization. So that has to come from you. And it takes work. As I say, it doesn't happen on its own. Good culture takes work. I said respect, lead by example. Along with that, respect has to be earned. You can't just expect the people you hire to, well, you've got the CEO title, therefore I completely respect you. You expect them to show you, to give you that chance to earn their respect. And I think, up front, you hire them, they are going to respect you as their boss, but you have to continue to earn it. You have to show them after the fact that you deserve that respect. Otherwise, you'll find it eroding very quickly. And that, respect is earned in a lot of ways. It's by, again, leading by example. It's by driving a good culture. It's about putting in the extra effort yourself. It's about doing the right thing for your employees and your customers. It's about being empathetic and being a nice guy, but still being confident and firm in the direction that you're taking the company at all times. Now, if there was one, I bolded this here, because this is probably the biggest downfall of most leaders in small companies that I've seen. And not to pick on Canadian companies, but Canadian CEOs, I find this more than US ones that I've dealt with. Make decisions, assess, make more decisions. It's not wrong. It's okay to be wrong. It's absolutely okay to be wrong. It's not okay to be sitting on the fence. Because if you are not making decisions, things aren't moving forward. Nothing's getting done. You're not getting closer to figuring out the right formula for product market fit. If you're sitting there constantly rehashing in your own boardroom, should we do this or should we do that? Yeah, well, we could do this, but then it's got that downside. Well, we could do that, but there's that. You got to do that stuff. But do it, put a stake in the sand, move forward, try it, always be assessing, understand what is going to tell you whether it's working or failing from the point that you start moving forward. And if it's not working, go back to it again and make another decision and move forward. In the time that a lot of companies spend rehashing over and over and over hard decisions like this, before actually ever trying anything, you could have tried 3 or 4 different things and probably gotten to one that worked, as opposed to getting no further. Without actually trying it, you're actually, the same people in a boardroom going over the same problems over and over again are not going to get to a better solution than getting out there and trying something. So make decisions, move forward. Your board will not shoot you for being wrong. They will shoot you for not doing anything. I can tell you that for sure. Know when you're out of your depth and get help. There's a lot of people out there that can help you, a lot of people who want to. One thing you'll find about entrepreneurs, they love to talk about their companies in the past and the things that they've done, and many of them want to share that, and they want to help. So don't even hesitate to pick up the phone and call someone who you wouldn't even think, you think, oh my God, I can't believe I'm calling, Balsillie at RIM, Do it. If you're a confident person and you're reaching out for help, You'd be amazed that even a guy like Balsillie might take that call and spend 15 minutes with you on the phone. And if he likes you, you never know. He could be an advisor to your company. Try. There is no downside. Get used to hearing no. You probably still hear no from a lot of those, but you may find some really, really great people that are willing to spend some time with you and help you if they like you. And that can be really invaluable. So know when you're at your depth, get help. Surround yourself with mentors and advisors. And the one thing I would say, I should have bolded this as well, there is no Messiah out there. This decision-making cycle of not making decisions, it's amazing to see these leaders that as they're not able to make the decision, they're constantly looking for someone from the outside that will tell them what to do. They're just looking for that person who can come in and they'll pay them, they'll pay them $3,000, $5,000 a day to come in and do a strategy session with them, hoping that great, wise person that's done it before is going to be able to come in and go, well, it's clear you should do this and not that. And then go, oh, thank God. It never happens that way. And if someone does come in and do that, they did it without really knowing your business, and you're actually taking a pretty big risk. Only you can make those decisions. There are no messiahs. Get the input from the mentors and advisors, make decisions and move on and learn from them and move on and try again. So, no messiah. Team, don't settle for second best, listen to your gut. When you're trying to hire someone and you're interviewing them, if your gut's telling you that this is probably not a good fit, it's probably not. You want to get good people. And cultural fit is as important as competence. You want to get people that know their job, but you really got to think about, are they going to gel with the culture of my team? Are the people here going to like them? Are they going to get along? Or is it someone who's just going to butt heads? And sometimes what you're actually looking for is someone who's going to butt heads depending on the role. That's actually sometimes what you're wanting, but you have to know that that's what you're hiring for that role. Sometimes you want that little bit of friction between product management and development. A little bit of headbutting there. It's not bad. Or actually, maybe it's between the CTO and product development, and the product management person is the one who's the peacemaker in between that sort of, can arbitrate between the visionary that wants this and the development manager says, I don't want to build that to come to the right thing. Don't be greedy. Company makers cost. This isn't so much about money. You're not likely going to have a lot as a startup, but it's equity. You got to give a little bit of equity to early people that are going to make your business. If you really see somebody that you think can make a real difference to your business, you often have to give a bit of equity to them because obviously you can't give them what they could earn at IBM or at RIM or somewhere like that in most cases as a startup. So don't be too greedy with your equity and grip onto it. You're better off a successful company that you end up owning 5% of than a failed company that you own 20% of. Right? So if someone can really help you, don't worry about that. Hire above you. Again, big mistake that a lot of leaders make is they're threatened by people that are better than them at things that they think they should be great at. A great CEO is a quarterback. They don't have to be good receivers. They don't have to be good linemen. They don't have to be good defensive backs. They're a quarterback. They do one thing. They do it really, really well. And the one thing that a CEO does is understands the business, understands what needs to be done, and orchestrates to put the best people in the position, in the right positions to make the company successful and to guide that vision, to know when to make the decisions. Really, the CEO is that person who has to make those decisions. CEOs that hire below them, they hire a head of business development that wouldn't be as good a business development person as they are. They hire somebody in head of sales that probably wouldn't be as good as they are because they don't want somebody who threatens them. That's a big, big mistake. Don't be threatened by people that are better at you than at the function you're hiring them for. You look for them. I said here, avoid hiring friends. I should have just said, be careful hiring friends. Same thing with that founder discussion. If they're friends, I would say you just generally don't want to be a founder with or hire somebody whose friendship you would hate to lose if things went sour. Because the reality is, if they're working for you, you may have to fire that person in the future. They might be a great friend and you could like them for a lot of reasons, and you might be even hiring them because you think, man, it's going to be fun going for beers with them after work. And then it turns out they just don't do their job very well. And then you actually have to either live with that, which you may be able to do, but if you end up with investors, they won't. They won't let you do that for very long. Or you got to fire your friend. So think about that. Investing in your team is really smart. We used to do a lot of things at Think. We'd bring in guest speakers and do lunch and learns. Bring in pizza and somebody to speak during lunch. Investing in educating our team in any group about the market, about new areas of technology. You know, invest in your people, and it'll pay back tenfold. Give credit where it's due. You know, it's an important thing to make people feel recognized for the work that they do. You know, we all know it when it gets noted that we did something great. It gets really well recognized. If you're not recognizing people's inputs, what you might find is they start going around trying to make it noticed, and that's more destructive than anything. When they're sort of, no, that was my idea, I did that. You don't want that. As a leader, just make sure everyone knows what people have done. Make a big deal of it. It doesn't hurt anybody. Reward above and beyond contribution. You know, you get those people that really worked hard and did something to get you over the hump with a customer situation or to get a release out. You know, they were away from their family or their girlfriend or whatever for the weekend. If you can do it, you know, it doesn't have to be a big deal, but give them a gift certificate to a restaurant. Send them out to dinner with their wife or their girlfriend or something like that for the effort they made. Those kind of things go a long way, and they're really well recognized. And then, as I said, employees, they're not your friends. You know, these are people that you may have to discipline, you may have to fire. And you're not your employee's friend either, even though it might feel like it. You go for beers with them, but they know that you may have to do that kind of thing. You might have to come down on them. There is a divide between you that is best kept, you know, between a leader and the people that work for them. It's an understanding. You can be very friendly, I'm not saying that, but you're not friends. How am I on time here? How am I doing? Am I really...
You probably should try to wrap up, and maybe it's time for a couple of questions.
What time is it?
We're at about time now. We're
Oh.
going to start at 2.
I think this is actually my last... No, I've got this and one more, but I will go through them faster.
Okay.
So go to market. Don't ramp up sales, marketing. Don't ramp up sales, you know, PR and that sort of thing until you've got product market fit. Know that you got a product that people want before you start doing that. A lot of companies go bust because they hire a big sales force because they got their first release out. Got a release out, and we're going to hire a big sales force to go push it. And then what they find is that the market didn't want what they had built in the first release, and now they're carrying the financial weight of 6 salespeople across the US that are costing them $150,000 a year when they're not selling. Company goes under. Or they have to lay off all these people that they wooed away from other good jobs, and that's a horrible thing to do. And usually it comes with an expensive package. Every employee is in sales as a leader, especially you. I say this because you really are about getting that product to be the right thing for the customer. I'm not suggesting that every employee, including developers, is going to be out there selling product, but you are a part of the sales process. If the salesperson calls and needs somebody to go and make the customer successful, you are now a part of that sales engagement, and you got to do it. Customer and reviewer job number 1. You've got to get to that point. Beware of false positives. You know, this is one of those things where you may think you got product market fit, you know, because you got 2 or 3 customers that are using it if it's enterprise. They may not actually be. You know, they might not be representative of the bigger market. So you kind of got to look at why are they using it. And is there is it something that we can see across a lot of other companies that are going to need it? You know, I would argue that Twitter and that type of thing might well be a false positive. It's not that hard, it seems, to get the TechCrunch 50,000 interested in your product. But, you know, will it jump the shark before it crosses the chasm? Is it? I was on I had a panel at a conference I spoke at last week where they had a group of young people at it, 9 years up to 15 years old people on a panel. Not one of them had heard of Twitter. That was really interesting to me that group had not heard of Twitter. That tells me that it's a long way from the mainstream. You know, unlike something like Facebook, where they are all on Facebook. The Twitter group is still a fairly tight community that uses that. It may be a false positive. Set clear expectations early with customers and partners. You know, you can spend a lot of time in doing a dance. They've got loads of resources and people to throw at using up your time to learn from you. You want to go in with them and set an expectation early that this is what I'm going to do for you and this is what I want to get for it. And make sure that they understand that you're expecting something back. Otherwise, they could really waste a lot of your time. Learn to say no. Not every deal is a good deal. You know, it might bring in some money to the company, but it could be such a distraction for you that it doesn't take you anywhere from there. Don't try to partner too early. Until you've got product market fit and you've got some customers that are willing to stand up and say this is the best thing since sliced bread, going and trying to get partners to push your product for you can be a dead-end street, can waste a lot of your time. And one thing I would definitely say is don't count on partners for your success as a company. If your whole business model is based on getting OEMs with another big company, pushing product through big companies, you could find yourself in for a big surprise, because you cannot. There's absolutely no way from the outside that you can have any idea of what a big company is thinking or going to do, because everyone that you're interfacing with within the big company like IBM doesn't know either. Nobody at IBM below a senior vice president level has really a clue of where IBM's going at the end of the day. So they could even be telling you as a director level that this is going to be great, you're going to be a great fit for us, and it could just go south after 8 months of hard work and a lot of resources deployed trying to get an OEM with IBM. And it may not happen. So I'm not saying the partners are a bad thing, just don't count on them. You've got to get customers without partners, and then look to the partners to really scale your business. And then beware of bad partnerships. It's really easy to get into partnerships with big companies, and they don't realize it. They've just got they've got 4,000 salespeople in the group that all of a sudden start making demands on you, and they can sink your business if you don't have it structured in a way that you're actually getting money for the things that are happening, where you can turn the dial. So getting experienced business development support for that is, in doing those kinds of deals, is really important. And then deliver. You got to deliver. If you set out and you say you're going to do something for a customer, if you don't deliver, in the world of the internet with blogs and so on, that gets around really fast. So say what you're going to do and then do what you say. That's so important. And then PR, from a marketing perspective, advertising and all that sort of stuff is kind of blasé. PR is really where you're going to get the best bang for your buck as a startup. There's a lot of great places out there to get coverage like that, public relations, getting on blogs, getting in articles, getting interviewed, and that sort of thing. Financing, this is the last slide. Know what you're getting into when you go to take financing. If you can build your business without it, there's a lot of glamour around being VC backed, it seems, among entrepreneurs. It's not that glamorous. It really is a one-way train. Once you take it, you've set a course that you cannot get off of anymore as a company. And that's where I say, are your goals aligned? The course that you are getting into is one of an exit and a big one. Venture capital is putting money into companies expecting a 10x return on their money. So you might take that money, and with a post-money valuation that is going to mean that they have to sell your company for $100 million before they're happy. And all of a sudden, you might still own 20% of this company. And along comes an offer of $20 million. And you're thinking, my God, I'm going to make $4 million bucks. I'm 23 years old. I'm going to make $4 million. You want to take that. You think, I can do another one. The VC is going to go, no, we don't make any money at that. Keep going. Turn your back. That's the train that you're getting on when you take venture financing. So be aware of that. It's out of your hands, a lot of those sort of decisions now. What stage are you at? Not a big deal. Getting into venture capitalists is really about your network. Lobbing business plans or two-pagers into a venture firm expecting them to return your call isn't going to work. Again, your mentors and advisors are the ones who can get you in. Other entrepreneurs that have already been funded by a VC is a good way to get in. You need to be walked in. VCs get thousands of business plans a year. They don't have the resources to look at all of them. They get enough from their network that keeps them busy. So you got to come in through their network. Shop around, but not too much. That's not so important. Target good board members. When you are looking at VCs, if you have choice, don't just find a firm that you'd like to work with. Find the partner that is a good fit for you, because they're likely the partner that you go in with is the one who's going to be on your board. So if you have a firm and you're doing wireless applications and they've got a bunch of different partners and one of them did a wireless applications company, that's the person to target. Find the VCs. If you've got 30 you could go after and you're only going to hit 6 or 8 to start with, find the 6 or 8 that have got the partners that have got experience in your market, and understand that. Don't be unrealistic about valuation, not a big deal. Take money when it's on offer. Don't let your business slide. Raising money can be really distracting. It can consume a lot of resources in the company, and it's amazing. If you're not careful, you can find that 4 or 6 months have just passed and you've made no progress on getting to product market fit or getting new customers. You've got to be careful of that as a leader. You need to isolate your company away from it as much as possible. You really do take most of that on your shoulders as the CEO and maybe the founders. Getting financing is not a win. It's not an accomplishment unto itself. It is a right to play the game. It's a chance to win. You haven't made a business by getting financing. All you've done is gotten the resources to take a run at it. And if you don't do the right things, it's only a stay of execution. Okay, so a lot of companies, they raise finance and think, woohoo, we win, we raise money, it's a big accomplishment. It's great. Get past it and move on quickly. Have a party. The next day, you're now trying to figure out how to use that money to be successful, because if you don't do something significant with that round of money in the next 12 to 18 months, you're not going to raise more. And if you do raise more, it's going to be at a really, really bad valuation, and you're going to get crammed down to where you own so little of the company you might not care anymore. So you got to get focused and then spend wisely. So that's it.
That's awesome. Thank you, Duncan.
So if there's any time for questions, I'm happy to answer some.
One quick question. Who's got the best one? Questions? Who's got a question?
Nothing, eh?
Oh, sorry.
Say you have an idea and you want it, and it depends on a client that you're making it for. So it's not like a product you can put into market. It has to be client funded, client driven.
Yep.
Until you talk to that client and realize it and make that deal with them, and you don't want to just start programming because you don't want to waste your time developing.
Yeah.
What do you do in those months of just planning and getting that done? Because all that time where you're waiting for them to meet you, you're waiting for them to email you, you could be coding, but you don't want to have that wasted, as you say.
Well, I mean, if there's not something else that you need to do to get to that point, then do some coding, do a prototype by all means. If you have something to show them, at the end of the day, when you get that meeting, what you want to do is get them to share your vision. So you need to be able to show them how it's going to be significant to their business. That's the thing to spend the time on at that point, is very much figuring out, understand their business first of all. That's a great way to spend the time. Learn as much as you can about their business. So when you go in there to see them in a month or two, you're talking their language. If a week's effort can allow you to show some sort of a prototype that's maybe a look and feel that maybe doesn't have a lot of stuff behind the scenes, great, that's going to help you. But it's all about getting them to share your vision and believe in the value proposition that you're pitching to them. So that's the place to spend the effort. I'm happy to talk about that more for your specific situation, but yeah.
Okay, that's all the time we have for Duncan today, but thank you very much for coming. That's great information, and I'm going to get the slides from you afterwards so that the students can have access to it. But thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you, Sean. Great. Thank you.
So